Okay, we know what PHP code we need in order to run an SQL query. What are we going to do with the data? If we've run selects, if we've run a select, where are we going to show the records? Okay, so let's explore that. If we look at index.php in the house cell, here is our SQL query with our prepare statement. Okay, it's a select all, so we don't have any bind value statements in here. And we've run a fetch all, so all of our records are inside $all_queries1. Now this, as I said earlier, is a complicated variable. It's got loads of records inside it, and each record has got loads of fields. So there are lots of individual bits of data in there. So if we just take a quick peek at the product table, such as here, and just to bear in mind here, the field names are all called product underscore something except for quantity and stock, and product ID is a primary key. Okay, and here are our records. Okay, so primary key, name, product image, I'm storing that in here as well, so we can display the image, and then various other product description and quantity and stock as well, and product price. So that information is all in there. So the question is, how are we going to display all this data on the pages? And specifically in terms of the image, how are we going to make sure the image displays correctly? The assumption here with all these images is that they're all stored in the same place, because there's no path before any of them. Okay, it's just a pure name, bread.jpg, chess set, and so on. Yeah, so there's no subfolders involved in any of these product image names. Okay, so they're all in the same folder. So let us look at the code. How do we do this? We use a select all. Okay, all underscore queries 1 is storing all this information, and this is what's called an array. I'm sure you've guessed that already, but it's a particular type of an array. Okay, it's a two-dimensional array. So you can think of it as being a bit like a spreadsheet, where each row is a record. So the outer dimension on the two-dimensional array is the records, and then the inner dimension inside each of these records are the field values in each record. Okay, so what we need to do with all of these records is essentially look at them one at a time. Okay, so basically we want to loop through each record one at a time. So you might be thinking, okay, that sounds like a for loop, and in fact we are going to use a for each loop. Okay, which is slightly different than a for loop. In a for loop, I think I showed you one in last week's PHP example. In a for loop, we have a counter. It starts typically at 0, which is the index of the first array element, and it goes right up to and including, up to but not including the length of the array elements, the number of array elements. Okay, this time for each is different. For each doesn't use an index, a numeric index at least. Okay, and the reason for that is that all queries 1 is it's an array, it's a 2D array, but it's not an array whose index is numeric. Okay, it's an array whose index uses words, and in fact the words that are used are the names of the fields in the database table. Okay, but in order to get to that happy situation, because we know the names of the fields in our database table, we know they're product underscore something, product underscore ID, product underscore name, and so on. But before we can get to the happy circumstances of using those database table field names, we have to basically split it up one record at a time. Okay, so that's the purpose of the for each loop. And how does it work? What's the syntax? For each, and then this 2D associative array, and it's associative because it doesn't have a numeric index. Okay, so the index is associated with words rather than numbers. Okay, so for each, and essentially this is the 2D array, and essentially the as part, after the as part, is the one-dimensional array. Okay, so each time we go around the for each loop, we are accessing one record at a time, and we are going to store that one record at a time into $1 query 1. Yeah, is that okay? $1 query 1. Okay, so each time, if we have 5 records in our table, we are going to run this for each loop 5 times. Okay, it's going to go around 5 times. First time around, first record goes in there. Next time around, the second record goes in there, and so on. And then all we need to do then, remember this is a 1D array. Okay, so we've gone from a 2D array into a 1D array each time around the loop. So, and this 1D array stores one record. This 2D array stores all records. So, one query 1, one underscore query 1. How do we access, product ID 1, product name, whatever it is, the image, and so on? Very simple. Look at where this is highlighted. You just have a square bracket after it, and then inside it, you put the name of the database table record. Let's come back and look here. Okay, what have we got? Product underscore ID, product underscore name, underscore image underscore name, product underscore description, product underscore price, quantity and stock. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, six fields, 5 of which start off with product underscore. Okay, does that make sense? Let's see. What have we got here? I'm doing all this inside of a div, and class equals product details. Okay, this is unique to the index.php page. So product details is there in the style. And what have we got here? We've got a color here. Loads of F's for red, loads of F's for blue, a bit less of green. So the color is going to be predominantly red and blue mixture, which of course is purple. So here is our page, okay, and here's the start of the for each loop. This is the first record. Okay, so here's that kind of purpley background. I've got a kind of a double line along the border of this div, and we've got labels here, and we're setting them to inline block, and setting the width so that the data appears nicely here. Okay, so product underscore ID, product underscore name, product underscore image underscore name, product underscore description, product underscore price, and then quantity underscore in underscore stock. So this is all looping through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, they're numbered, so I don't need to bore you mindless going through them all, but there's a fair amount. Okay, what have we got? 44 here. And so notice the images are, the height can vary, but the width isn't really varying. So I'm fixing the image width. So let's come back and look at our code. So how am I doing this? For each loop, one record at a time. Okay, so for each record, and let's just think a little bit more about this. There's PHP, okay, to actually run the query, and the for each loop is inside the PHP. Watch the colon at the end of the for each. Okay, and then notice at the end here, I've got end for each here. So I'm coming out of the PHP here. I'm into pure HTML from here as far as here. Okay, so I'm opening the div, I'm writing the first label, and then I want, after the first label, I want to display the product ID. So I am essentially using the PHP here. Okay, so I'm embedding some PHP inside HTML here. So I'm echoing to screen, and this is going to echo it, yeah, just as text. It's not in a paragraph or label. And then we've got one query 1, which links up with here, and then square bracket product underscore ID. And similarly for product underscore name. And then image, bit more complicated. Okay, there is product image name, but we know that we need to put the path in front of it. So my echo here is a wee bit more complicated. Okay, I need to create an image tag. I need to say where the images are. They're in the media folder and the product subfolder inside that. And then we have all the image names, the .jpegs or whatever. And then I am back to another string. And I am setting the width of all these images to be 80 pixels. Notice this little quotation mark here, single quotation mark here. Okay, HTML quotation marks within PHP code, I'm using a single quotation mark for there, and I'm using a double quotation for the PHP quotation mark. So just be very careful of quotation marks there. Product description, straightforward, just text. Product price, similarly, I'm just putting a euro symbol in front there. And then finally, quantity in stock. Here's my for each loop. Here's my end for each loop. And I am also going to work out how many records there are. So I've got this counter here. I'm setting it to 0 before my for each loop, and inside the loop I am increasing it by 1. Okay, and then I'm using that just to be a little bit elaborate here. If that equals 1, I am writing there is 1 record. Okay, if it's not 1, there are 2 records or whatever. So it's just a way of tweaking, making sure our sentences are grammatically correct. Okay, so that's a nice thing to do with your code.